Hey, I'm Felipe, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how you can build end-to-end automations that are so good, you could even build a SaaS after these automations, or if you're running them in your own business, have them work better, have them work at scale without breaking all of the time. And so I want to cover the principles that I thought were very obvious, and that is because I do have a background in software engineering. I build automations all day long at sevenfigureoperations.com, and I've been doing so for the last 7 years. And there are a lot of things I thought were obvious, but turns out they're not. And I'm seeing a lot of clients do wrong. And today I want to tell you how you can fix them and build a better backend. So to start off, we're going to go in order. I was building this automation with a client yesterday on call and explaining a lot of the things. So I'm going to explain this to you as well. I think you will find a lot of benefit in seeing this. So first things first, the way that we like to build automations is so that they run without crashing the server and crashing halfway through and leaving you not knowing what happened. So first principle is that you're going to have a trigger in your automation, right? This trigger could be a form, it could be a webhook, it could be whatever you want to use as a trigger, even clicking this button right here. And what you don't want to happen is that your trigger triggers the automation itself to start running. Why? Because if you click twice the button, you start 2 automations. If another user clicks the button as well, then you're starting 3 automations. And when you're running a lot of automations consecutively, you're more likely to crash the whole server. Why? Because you're going to use more memory. You're going to use more RAM memory from the server itself, and you're going to limit its operating capacities. And it's more likely that some functions will stop working because it ran out of RAM. Okay, so what we want to do instead is we want to do the following. We want to have the trigger. Let's call that a form, okay? So you fill out a form to trigger a lead enrichment automation. What you want this form to do is log the entry. What I mean by that is you want to have a system like Airtable or Google Sheets or Postgres or whatever you want to use to document every log. Okay, so the user 1 has requested to run this row. User 2 has requested to run this row. User 3 has requested to run this row. And then you're going to have your automation come in every 1 minute, for example, and check if there is a new record. If there is a new record that has not started, it will run the process. 1 minute later, when it checks again and it notices that there is one automation already running, it will not run, right? It will wait. It will wait until this automation has finished running to then trigger the next one. That will make your automation a lot more robust. It will run one operation at a time, and it will run it to completion and then go to the next one. That way you don't overwhelm your server, you make sure your automations run smoothly, you don't have to fix a lot of things due to capacity errors, okay? Especially important if you're running leadless and you're running a lot of rows all at once, okay? So, okay. Now, the main objection that I get whenever I explain the system is that people say, but this is too slow, right? And that is actually partially true. If you are running one automation at a time in only one instance, it may be slow, depending on the automation that you built. But if you have a smart automation like the one I'm going to show you today, it's actually going to run very quickly because it's going to have sub-operations running. Meaning that it will run one operation in each server, and if you have 3 servers operating all at once, it actually turns out to be super fast to run these automations. So today I'm going to present to you how you build automations that run very fast and you deliver the result fast, right? So, okay, first things first, we need to have a system where we log all of the entries from the users. I like to use Airtable. You could use Google Sheets, you could use other tools. Now, if you're using Airtable, every time someone fills out a form, it is going to create a record, right? So for example, this would be a record right here. And it's going to have a default state of not started, meaning automation did not start. Once the automation starts running, I'm going to have a node in the automation that will notify Airtable that the automation started, which means that if another user triggers the automation as well, it will create a new log. If multiple users now go ahead and request different automations to be running, it will keep on creating these logs. But Airtable will always check every 1 minute if there is one automation running, one automation that has the status of started. And if it does, well, these automations right here, 2 and 3, will wait to run until the first one has completed. And so the first step is going to be that you're going to have a node looking into your log system if another automation has started. If it has, then nothing is going to happen. You put a node of no operation, do nothing. If it has not, meaning if it has not and there are no other records code started, it will then take the first one and run that. How? By checking again if there is any code not started and with a limit of one record coming through at that time. Okay? First thing it's going to do as soon as it got the record is it's going to check if it can even run that automation. So before we talk about that, let's close this as a chapter. Chapter 1 of this video is you need to first build a system that can deal with a lot of volume. It can run a lot of automations at its own pace. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2 is you need to assume that the users using your platform are incompetent. What does that mean? It means that if the user that's using this makes a mistake, you don't want the automation to waste credits, waste time, and blow in front of the user's face. Even if that's your own face, if the automation is running just for your own company. So what you want to do is have a checking system to make sure there is nothing wrong. Okay? If you went ever on a plane and you were traveling somewhere, you probably noticed that the pilot has to go through a very extensive checklist before he or she can even turn on the engine. And the reason for that is to avoid dumb mistakes, silly mistakes like, oh, we don't have enough gas, so the plane should not be flying in the first place. That is what we're doing here. So there is 2 steps to this. Step 1, we're going to check if, for example, they submitted a spreadsheet to be transformed, if the sheet even opens. So the first step is going to be, let's check that. If it does not open, instead of having the automation try to keep running, just notify the front-end user that it did not work. In this case, I have a Slack message that would go out, and notify Airtable that it has errored. So then this status goes from started to errored, which means that this automation will not try to keep on running and take away capacity. The automation now will run the next row and the next row. Right? What this also allows you to do is if the user made a mistake, the automation will not penalize the user. It will just stop it right here. The user can fix the mistake and run it again. Okay? So that is the second step. We need to be checking if there are any errors in the sheet. Now, not only that, we also need to check if the data they gave us to use in this automation is good or bad. So for example, I want to check if they submitted a spreadsheet, if I have the right columns inside the spreadsheet. Because if I don't, again, I'm going to notify my front-end user that I cannot use this, right? They need to fix that first. So an example of that would be if you're looking for website URLs to find people at those companies. If you don't have website URLs as a column, the automation will not work. There is no reason to keep on pushing this and wasting time. So stop it right here. Error handling, okay? One quick tip. If you're worried that some of the automations that you have, let's say using ChatGPT, Google Sheets, whatever, will error and you want to notify the front-end user about the error specifically without having them have to open an IDEN, all you have to do is come here on the node, go to settings, and then you go here on error, and you put continue using error output. What that will allow you to do is push together this other arrow right here saying that, this other arrow right here in case there is an error, and find a node of what needs to happen after, such as notify user on Slack, or notify Airtable, or do anything of that nature. Okay? That's just a small tip. Okay, cool. Now that we checked if let's say the spreadsheet that they submitted is good, and we check if it has the right columns, we need to check if the data that's in there hasn't been processed already. So now, okay, let's go to step number 3. Let's just recap real quick. Step 1, make sure you're not running multiple automations at once. Step 2, make sure the user didn't submit anything retarded. Step 3 is make sure that the data has not already been processed. What that means is the following. If you're, let's say, enriching websites, you don't want to enrich them twice in case you had to rerun the automation. That would be wasting credits, that would be wasting time, and that is not of no help to you. So what you want to have is a system that will check if you have the input and if you already have an output. So let me explain. There is 2 ways to look at this. Okay? We're going to take a step back, go slowly through this. Way number 1 is before you execute any node on an IDEN, you should check if it was already executed, which is why you need to be informing a data center like Airtable that the automation has started. So for example, in this automation, as soon as it starts, it will check the box that the automation started and the status is started, right? That is what it's going to do. And then it's going to check this box and change this status right here. Everything started. Once I ran the first node, which in this automation is checking if the spreadsheet is good, okay, I'm going to inform Airtable already done that. So before I check it next time, I will check if I already did it before. That way I don't need to redo it. You understand? as an example as well, if I have my first function to be extracting external URLs from my sheet, okay, let's say that's what I'm doing. I'm taking text and I'm extracting a URL that I can process later on. That's the first step. When I do that, the first thing I want to do is check if I haven't already done that. So I would check if I have already checked this checkbox on Airtable. If I did, well, it skips this function and it goes to the next function, right? Saving time, saving money, not processing the same data twice. If it has not, then it will do it. Okay? So that was the third tip. You need to make sure that you're saving the steps that you already done so you don't redo them. And the second step to that is that you need to check if you have input to be processed that wasn't processed already within the spreadsheet, for example. So what this means is, if I have a spreadsheet, so let me actually open a spreadsheet here to give you as an example. Let's do it like this, okay? So here on the left, we're gonna have text. Let's do it like this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, text to extract website from. Okay, that is one column. The next one is extracted website. Okay, what I want to make sure that I'm doing is I want to check if I have data to extract from. So you have a bunch of text here, and then you have a website like there, like say mine, sevenfigureoperations.com. And so what you wanted to do is to take this and put it here. So I want to first check, do I have data to run, right? Do I have input, meaning do I have data here? And at the same time, do I not have the data already processed? Meaning, if I already had sevenfigureoperations.com in the second column, well, in this case, I don't need to run automation. It already ran before. So it would just skip it. So the first step in the automation itself that you're running is checking if you already have the input and you don't have the output. Cool? If it's true that you don't have input or already have all of the outputs, well, notify the front-end user that this is already finished. Go to the next step of your automation. If not, then you're going to start the automation. Cool? And that brings us to the next step. The next step is batch your automations. Rule of thumb. Always have, if you have a very bulky automation, have your military base where you're checking if the user is making mistakes, is where you strategize what's going to happen. Then you want to have your small military tent, which is where you're going to check if the sub function can run. Meaning in this case, if I have input and output inside a sheet, I'm going to process. And then you want to send your underground ops to the field to execute the mission. But it has to be batched. You have units that execute the whole function. Let me explain this in a very simple way, okay? I know this is very hard to understand at first. But if I'm going to process a whole spreadsheet like this one, right? I don't want to do this in the main automation because what if it breaks right here? It's going to break my whole automation. It doesn't allow me to troubleshoot along the way. But if I'm running one row at a time, as if it was a soldier doing one function, what it allows me to do is fix it halfway through. Or if there is a mistake on here, it will not stop the automation. We process everything else too. How do we accomplish that? It's very simple. You're going to have your commando center, your military base as one automation. This one right here. Every time it needs to execute a function, it will call the military tent where my underground ops are at. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to execute a sub workflow. Okay? A sub workflow. Or I'm going to do an HTTP request, getting advanced now, but bear with me, this is going to be very helpful for you. Or I'm going to execute an HTTP request that will call a webhook. Okay, so let me do here, webhook. That will call a webhook later on. So I will call this function to start from an HTTP request. Or I'm going to use execute sub workflow, so sub workflow, to trigger this other automation in a separate instance. This allows me two things. One, to keep the automation separate so it's easy to swap them in the future. If I want to swap something in here, I just focus on this one operation. It's easier to fix things. Or if I want to run this in a completely different server, completely different domain, completely different server, I can, right? And so now you can license functions to your clients too. That is another thing we'll allow you to do, but let's not get there too much. If you're curious about that, you can drop a comment down below and I can talk about how you can license your automations to people. Build a SaaS. Okay? But you want to have sub functions, and these will be very simple and very condensed. And then in your sub function, your military tent, You're just going to check if everything is ready, if you can actually go on the mission. And if you can, you're going to run the mission in batches. I like to use the loop over items function, and I want to run, let's say, 25 bullets at a time. I want to put 25 underground ops in the field at a time. And then I'm going to execute another sub-workflow, which is the field operation. What does that mean? Let me open here the overview. Let me show you the final operational piece of this, which is going to be this one right here, the API. So the API means that now I'm triggering another workflow, and then I just execute the thing I need to execute. In this case, all I do in here in this automation is take row, put output, take row, put output. The benefit of me doing this in batches like this from the base is that if one row has a problem, no worries. It will just skip that row and execute the other 25. Right? You see what I mean? It's easier to do it this way. Also, it allows me not to hit any API limits because I'm not sending everything to one API all at once. I'm sending 25 at a time. It's way simpler. And 25 is not a magic number. It's just a number I put in this example, but it might be different depending on the API that you're using. And so it's going to run slowly. And Google Sheets, for example, Google Sheets has an API limit. You cannot just write data very fast. If you try to put 10 pieces of data all at once in Google Sheets, they will say stop. They'll say you're hitting the limit. And you avoid that by instead running 10 bullets, meaning extracting 10 pieces of data at once, and only writing when you finish getting those 10 or 25 pieces. So in this case, it will run 25 bullets through the execute workflow. When you finish at 25, it will then add all 25 in one go into Google Sheets. So now I don't hit any limits. You see what I mean? This is way better, okay? So that is the next principle. Run things in sub-workflows as much as you can. Make sure to run them in sub-workflows, and you only open the sub-workflow if it hasn't been executed yet before, based on what you saved in Airtable, okay? And that brings us to the last thing that I'm going to tell in this video. I don't want to make this too long, but I want to give you very actionable advice that will make your automations better, even if you want to launch a SaaS company in the future. The next one is that you need to save all errors. If there is an error anywhere along the way, and you can, again, do that by going to the settings of the node on error and put it to continue using error output, then you want to log the error that happened. Let's say in Airtable, for example, you want to create a record. This record you're going to create in another table called errors log. And here, all you save is errors. This node broke. This tool ran out of credits. This tool did that. This tool did that. And if you see that the same errors keep on happening, you know what to fix. You see, so you don't need to open you don't need to open an ident to see that, which is very confusing. All you do is just log everything in Airtable, for example. Or it could be another tool. It could be Postgres, could be Google Sheets. Okay, so log your errors. It will allow you to save a lot of time on troubleshooting. It will allow you to see what is important and what is not. And it will also allow you to stop running automations if a lot of errors are stacking. So you could create another automation that if 5 errors occur in a row, it stops all automations from running. So you don't waste credits, for example. Okay, no need to run if it's like that. I'll give you one bonus tip. I just came to mind, just shooting things at you. If your API if your HTTP node ran out of credits, for example, let's say that you're using, you're going after Google Sheets, right? And Google Sheets hit an API limit. You want to have an error handling that if the error that happened is that you ran out of credits, so let's say ran out of credits, what you wanted to do is then, let's say, try to top up the credits. So you hit another HTTP request where you top up the credits, or you want to just notify the front-end user on Slack and tell, hey, get more credits, and until then, no automations will run. Or you could just have it wait, right? Because you know the team is going to do it. Wait for, let's say, 10 seconds before it tries again. So you can create these error handling nodes to deal with errors you know are very common to appear. And how do you know which errors are very common to appear? Because you're logging them on Airtable. I hope this was helpful to you. If you learn a thing or two, let me know in the comments what you thought. If you need help building your own automations and you want a second opinion, well, you can contact me at 7figureoperations.com. I'll look forward to that. And if you want to keep learning more about troubleshooting end-to-end automations, I strongly recommend that you watch the video on the screen right now, where I show you how I use ChatGPT to help me troubleshoot automations as I build them. I'm going to see you there. Thank you so much.